You know, it's amazing to me that the term Project Bluebeam has actually been trending online lately, because Project Bluebeam is one of those topics that everybody seems to reference, but few really seem to know much about. And for years, I really didn't know much about it either. Just that it had something to do with a secret plan to stage a fake alien invasion using holograms or something like that. But it was sort of a difficult topic to research back then, because most all the information that you could find about it was only in French, aside from a few low-budget conspiracy websites and message boards that were filled with people who didn't seem any better informed about it than I was. Well, since then, I've done my homework on it, and here's the thing. Despite what you might have heard, Project Bluebeam is not an officially recognized program of NASA or the United Nations, as many sources tend to imply, nor is it based on a leaked government document, as many others have claimed. And I just want to set the record straight, because even without all those false claims, Project Bluebeam is still an incredible prediction, and one that's looking more plausible with each passing day. So here's what it's really about. In the mid-1990s, there was an investigative journalist from Canada who began to raise alarms about a terrible agenda that's so shocking, it seemed like something pulled from the script of an apocalyptic horror movie. And yet, outlandish as it was, for many people who read the original report, it carried a strange ring of truth. It all started with a simple article titled Project Bluebeam, and I guess subtitled NASA, and it was written by a man named Serge Monast. And in this article, Monast claimed to have uncovered a dark, global plan that's so audacious it just defied belief. According to his alleged sources, governments and powerful elites were preparing to stage nothing less than a full-scale simulated alien invasion. He claimed that this would be accomplished through a joint effort that was carried out by the United Nations and by America's NASA program. And he explained that by using advanced holographic technology, these elites would soon project images of UFOs and alien spaceships all over the skies, and tricking the entire world into believing that we were under attack from another species. He claimed that this fake alien invasion would be the final step in a master plan to bring the world under one centralized authority, a new order that would erase national borders, dissolve religious institutions, and break down the foundations of society as we know it. And that through fear and chaos, people would begin to abandon their faiths and their freedoms and accept a single, unified government as their only hope. And in the wake of this deception, a new religion would rise, designed to control the masses. Sounds pretty familiar, huh? And according to the original report, Project Bluebeam involves 4 stages that are designed to shift global consciousness to this new world system. The first stage aims to undermine all religious belief systems by orchestrating what Monast calls a reevaluation of archaeological knowledge. He says that the conspirators would accomplish this by triggering artificial earthquakes at key sites. Again, this is in the mid-90s, so artificial earthquakes is also pretty interesting when you look at today's headlines. But anyways, he says that by triggering these artificial earthquakes at key locations, it would uncover pre-planted artifacts that would be falsely presented as ancient discoveries. And something about these discoveries, or so-called ancient artifacts, will serve to debunk all existing religions. And it'll be used to rewrite history and to discredit established doctrines, convincing people that their faith has been misinterpreted for centuries. And it kind of reminds me of the growing popularity of shows like Ancient Aliens, where we've seen many archaeologists and scientists suggest that certain ancient structures may have been built by aliens. So just imagine if an earthquake were to reveal an artifact that defied our understanding of human history, perhaps something even alien in origin. And that doesn't even account for the fact that we've practically been bombarded by this alien invasion storyline for well over a century at this point. Just repeatedly influenced through books and movies and TV shows. And now this alien myth has embedded itself into our collective imagination as a society. And it's changed the way that we perceive the universe and our place in it. So it's really not a big surprise that Hollywood is also purported to play a significant role in the first stage of Project Bluebeam. Manast claims that films like 2001: A Space Odyssey and Star Trek and even Jurassic Park and others were created to subtly advance this strategy of manipulation by constantly pushing themes of space exploration and evolution, and ultimately serving to undermine society's belief in a creator and to gradually condition us to accept, or maybe to even anticipate, an impending alien invasion. But things get even worse in Stage 2, which Manast refers to as the big space show in the sky. And this phase initiates a worldwide hoax orchestrated through advanced three-dimensional optical holograms and sophisticated sound technology. And by using laser projections, these stunning holographic images apparently will be displayed in the skies all over the world, and turning the heavens into a giant 3D movie screen. And these massive holographic scenes will play out in the skies above different regions, each tailored to reflect the dominant religious or cultural beliefs of that area. So for instance, in the United States, an image of Jesus Christ might appear, while in Indonesia, people would probably witness a portrayal of Allah or Muhammad or whatever. And accompanying these visual spectacles, a voice that is to be interpreted as the voice of God will start speaking to everybody, just speaking into the minds of everybody in the world, in every language, but delivering the same message to all of humanity. And Manast claims that this effect will be so realistic that it would truly appear to people as if divine figures are actually descending from the heavens. And he warned that the sheer scale and the precision of these staged events could convince much of the world that their spiritual hopes are finally being realized, while deceptively only drawing them deeper into this new universal religion. Serge Manast claimed that this technology was already being used at the time that he penned his report in 1994, and he suggested that UFO sightings and reports of flying saucers are often misinterpreted tests of this system, this holographic bluebeam system, and that throughout the first two stages of Project Bluebeam, enough elements would have been presented to make this final spectacle believable and entrapping even the most skeptical minds. It kind of reminds me of that verse in Matthew 24.
For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect.
If it's real, this agenda seems to be specifically tailored to biblical end-time prophecies. And things only get weirder from here. Stage 3 introduces something called telepathic electronic two-way communication, according again to Manast. And it's another top-secret technology that he alleges is being developed by NASA. And this one involves the transmission of advanced low-frequency radio waves that are beamed directly into the minds of targeted individuals. And I use the term targeted individuals to reference the growing community of people who claim to be victims of this very thing. They call it electronic harassment. And believe it or not, there have been thousands of so-called targeted individual cases published involving people that really believe that they're being attacked with direct energy weapons or some other forms of electromagnetic or microwave technology. But essentially, that they are victims of electronic harassment, that something is beaming messages into their minds. And much like Project Bluebeam, many of them claim to experience these constant, inaudible voices. Today, this is often referred to as voice-to-skull technology, or V2K technology. And it's another example of something that exists today, despite seeming ridiculous when Manast's report was published back in the mid-90s. And just look that up online and you'll see what I mean. But in the case of Project Bluebeam, these signals would be crafted to imitate divine revelation or supernatural messages, leaving people to believe that they're actually hearing the voice of God, or angels, or even extraterrestrials. And the signal would be uniquely generated to appeal to their own personal belief system. This way, people would willingly accept this new religious system being established, regardless of their prior political or cultural or religious differences. And it's another concept that must have seemed ridiculous at the time it was first published, but it seems rather plausible in light of all these modern artificial intelligence advancements.
It's called a nanophotonic metasurface waveguide.
It's a fancy term to say
There's a bunch of tiny optical elements embedded in the glass surface that help guide the light into and out of the waveguide.
Guiding light to create clear, moving images created using AI in 3D that can be projected on your eye. This is called an optical see-through augmented reality experience. It uses a small projector that sends the image through the waveguide where it bounces around before reaching your eye.
What we're thinking about is to provide a perceptually realistic experience that is very similar to the real world, and the vision is to go towards something that is indistinguishable from a real object.
And this brings us to the fourth and final stage, which is really just a matter of maximizing all these technologies and just turning the knobs up to 10. By this point, people are just wandering around in a state of confusion and vulnerability after enduring the first 3 steps of Project Bluebeam, and they're finally primed and susceptible to the final stage, the long-awaited alien invasion that will leave the whole world terrified, preying on the fears of extraterrestrial threats that have been steadily cultivated through decades of science fiction and UFO speculation. And while the unsuspecting citizens of the world finally succumb to the final stage of this alien propaganda, they'll be none the wiser that the whole thing was just a big hoax from the start, and it was only designed to set the stage for the establishment of this new system. And you got to remember that this article was published back in 1994, and you can just imagine how it was received back then. I mean, I admit that most of these claims seem incredibly unrealistic, but what happens when we start incorporating things like deep learning computer programs and generative AI? I mean, I'm sure in 1994, the idea of an artificially generated God seemed ridiculous, but even the free consumer version of ChatGPT could easily imitate a godlike message that's sensitive to your own personal data and preferences. And crazy holographic technology? Well, just look at the screen. If this is the commercial use of this stuff, then just imagine what the military might have. And I'm also sure that a lot of people chuckled back in the 90s about the idea of artificial thoughts being transmitted through radio signals and beamed into your mind. You know, that sounds like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. But then again, they didn't have Neuralink in 1994. And when you combine all this stuff together, you know, and you also throw in that we're hard at work on virtual reality systems for the metaverse, even Serge's most outrageous claims in stage 4 of Project Bluebeam, you know, regarding visualized manifestations of alien beings, may soon become a realistic possibility. And it makes you wonder what Monast would think about today's incredible leaps in technology, you know, many of which seem to echo the very things that he warned us about. But tragically, we'll never be able to hear his thoughts on this, because in 1996, just a year after publishing these controversial findings, Monast died of a sudden heart attack at only 51 years old, despite being in good health. His final year allegedly was consumed by this report, lecturing, writing, and pushing its message forward. And while some may dismiss his theories as outlandish, there were some unsettling circumstances surrounding his death that really leave room for pause. Things like strange police visits, government interference in his life, and most disturbingly, the Canadian government removed his children from his care, not due to any misconduct or any reported incident. Perhaps it was, as Monast claimed, to punish him for publishing this report. And I guess we'll never really know what happened. But if there was ever any merit to Project Bluebeam, I think that Monast's mysterious and untimely demise has only served to deepen the mystery surrounding his work.